Good day everyone, and welcome to Pablo Escobar's video series. Today we're going to be doing something a little different and discussing the in-game economy and the changes following the Krayt Dragon raid, as well as what the best value would be and how best to spend all of the available currencies. So let's hop on into Economics 101, an Ewok's opinion on the Post-Krayt economy. So just as an outline, what we're going to be going over are the different gear tiers, the bottlenecks that existed both before and after the Krayt raid, and then looking at the value of the currencies, so the currency conversion and which shops and currencies give the best conversion rates for different tiers of gear. I'm just going to finish off then with a brief discussion on the concept of banking and a little bit of a talk on inventory management. So the gear tiers are basically divided into four broad categories. The first, from the white gear through to green, is gear 1 to gear 6. The second is the purple gear from gear 7 to gear 11, the gold gear of gear 12, and then into your relic levels. So before the Krayt raid, you have your gear 1 to gear 6, and this is generally easy to accumulate. It usually accumulated on the side while farming character shards and your hard nodes, or you get it from donations, or you could buy them out of the arena store. It wasn't really something that you'd break your head over. But it's in this middle grouping from gear 7 to gear 11 that tended to be the most frustrating part to advance through. Even with the gear economy changes in 2021, there was a little bit of like a faucet opening that allowed some of this gear to come through with the daily challenges, specifically the gear on the bottom. But the bottlenecks remained with everything from the Spectre Gel through to the Mark 8 Biotech Salvage. And with the introduction of new characters requiring high amounts of Chirotech, that compounded this purple gear bottleneck, with a lot of characters in the rosters being stuck in this purple zone unless you were willing to spend crystals and by extension then real world money on it. There were ways to strategically work around it, but it was still tricky. We then got into gear 12, so before we go into that, I'd just like to break down the explanation of the different terms I'm going to be using. So gear 12 can be looked at in terms of three components. First is the left side piece, and these left side pieces comprise of making up one gold piece and one set of purple piece. The gold piece contains 30 of these gold pieces attached of the Mark 12s from the tactical data through to the wristband, and then the purple part would be made up of 40 pieces of any of the purple gear listed on the slide, from the Mark 6 medpacks, the Mark 6 Kabantis, the Mark 7 hypo syringe, the Mark 7 thermal detonator, Mark 7 fusion furnace, Mark 7 or 8 designed, and the Mark 8 scanners. So all of these could be then combined to form one of the left side pieces, and these were generally not too difficult to come by. But then you came with the right side pieces, and here you had a kind of confluence of different bottlenecks. So in order to make a right sided piece, you would need 50 pieces of a gold Mark 12 item. So either the datapad, the Mark 12 furnace, Mark 12 HoloLens, the stun gun, the computer, or a thermal detonator. That would be then combined with 40 pieces of one of these other items, the Mark 12 Nubian scanners, stun cuffs, hypo syringe, Kabanti, Mark Biotech Salvage, and the shield generator. And when combining that, you would also need 50 pieces of a typical bottleneck gear 7 to gear 11 piece, as well as 40 of one of the Mark 6, 7 or 8 pieces indicated on the slide. What I've highlighted in red here are the typical bottleneck pieces, and the reason that these existed was that if you look at the first bottleneck piece of the purple gear, these, like I mentioned, were needed from gear 6 through to gear 11, therefore compounding the problem of gear that was already scarce for those lower gears to be able to move up to gear 12. The Mark 6 medpack was needed for both the left side piece and for the right side pieces, therefore adding to a bottleneck requirement. And the three Mark 12 pieces that were needed in a count of 50 I've highlighted. These ones exist as a bottleneck because these pieces are also needed for the final part of a gear 12 conversion, which is your injector handle. And that brings us then to the discussion on the last piece, which is your injector handle. Now there's three variations on an injector handle that exist in the game: the plasma, the ionic, and the fusion. Each of these three have a set requirement, but these are still requirements that are competing with various other regions. So you'll either need a Mark 12 datapad, furnace, or a HoloLens, which, like I said, is being pulled away to the right side pieces as well. Then you need 50 pieces of purple gear, either the Mark 8 electro binoculars or the Mark 5 droid caller. Generally these aren't really a high requirement, but one or two characters do need them for their gear 7 to gear 11 progression. Will need actually 100 different chirotech pieces, and these will be either 100 of the computers or 100 of the shock rods. But as the game has advanced, more and more of the new characters require somewhere in the region of about 200 to sometimes even 250 of chirotech pieces in order to advance through their purple gears. And then you're stuck in this bottleneck of having to decide who gets the chiros, and they're quite difficult to come by generally. So if we look at it as an overview, these are the bottlenecks that existed, almost shared between the gear 7 through to gear 12 progression. The core pieces that tended to be very big sticking points was the Bacta-Gel, the Carbantes, the stun cuffs, the stun guns, and the golden eyeballs. Now, after the gear update came out, or the state of the gear RELIC and the gear economy adjustment of phase 1 in 2021, that sort of helped to alleviate the pressure a little bit, but it kind of then shifted a bottleneck from being the stun guns, which used to be problematic to get, to now being Carbantes, because these were used up more frequently by multiple other regions. So while it helped a little bit, it didn't quite make a huge impact in the long run, and it still ended up being quite difficult to advance characters from gear 7 through to your gear 13 and into relic levels. Now when we look at relic levels, they can be divided into 3 different tiers. So the first is your relic 1 to 4. And here what you'll need is increasing amounts of the carbonite circuit boards, bronzium wiring, and chromium transistors. When you get to relic 5 to 7, you still require the chromium transistors, the bronzium wiring, and the carbonite circuit boards, but now you also need increasing amounts of the rhodium heatsinks, the electrium conductors, and the zinc bundles. With Relic 8 to 9, in 2022 there was an adjustment made to the relic levels, so you no longer required carbonite circuit boards and bronzium wiring, but you still required the chromium transistors. So since they are needed from everything from Relic 5 right through to Relic 9, chromium transistors and rhodium heatsinks tend to be a bit of a bottleneck in the relic advancement. Impulse detectors and aero magnifiers, while required, were also a little bit difficult to come by. Impulse detectors you could buy off of crystals, but they were quite pricey, and in addition to that you also needed to sacrifice quite a bit of gear 12 gear to be able to scrap it to make them more efficient. Aero magnifiers were available, and if you were in a guild that had a significant GP advantage, you were able to earn them passively through the territory war wins, or more likely you'd have to rely on the Challenge Pit Rancor raid in order to bring in a lot of aero magnifiers into your account. But if you weren't able to do that, then you're a little bit stuck in how you're actually getting hold of these aero magnifiers unless you're willing to spend crystals on them and buy them out of the store. The Gerda keypads and the droid brains were also requirements that existed, but these tended to be a little bit more difficult to acquire, and they could be gained in the game through looking at getting wins in territory wars at higher GP levels. But they're also a sticking point, and for lower GP accounts they tend to be something that holds back the account quite significantly. So in looking over relic levels, these were some of the bottlenecks that I identified for relic progression. Now when we look at gear sources within the game, daily challenges tended to be the best after the gear RELIC changes in 2021. You were able to get a lot of core gear, and that's mainly what the focus of this infographic was. Everything required to get up to gear 13. You were able to get a lot of core gear from these daily challenges, and at the time you could get a lot of Grand Arena round payouts as well, because you tended to have a lot of dumping of these resources in the region of like 10 up to I think 15-20 sometimes. Obviously Grand Arena payouts top the list in terms of crystal payouts. At the end of the entire Grand Arena phase you get a huge amount of crystals coming in depending on which league you landed in. But when we're looking at gear specifically, daily challenges still tended to outrank it because of their frequency, and each of these challenges ran about 3 times in a week. So within a week you'd be able to finish and complete one of those major pieces to be able to advance a specific character. Territory Wars also helped in this regard by getting core gear into the account, and if you're able to run the heroic Sith Triumvirate raid, then that helped out because you were getting some gear 12 pieces, some of the core gear as well, and it did trickle down to make some difference to your guild. Obviously if you're getting CPIT, then that would have helped out a lot with getting aero magnifiers as well as some other core gear as well, and some Kairos, etc. Galactic challenges also helped in this regard to get some core gear, but also more importantly gave you the injector handle pieces in the region of 5, as well as some chirotech depending on which box you were able to hit. And then in that regard, with regards to the injector handles, assault battles definitely helped out. They were able to net you 10 of each of those pieces every time they came around. Territory battles I put a bit lower down the list because they only came around twice a month, and for the amount of investment you put in, yeah, you did get some gear, but it wasn't really something you could really bank on to help. It was a little bit of a boost, but it didn't particularly drive your economy a lot. And then you've also got the dailies, but here you get a very small amount and of very varied and random amounts, and this changed slightly after the 2021 update, but nothing really I think to write home about. Post-Krayt now, we've seen a significant amount of changes here. So we're looking at the gear 7 to gear 12. This entire economy has kind of like been revamped, and the reason for this is with the Mark 1 raid currency that's available, you're now able to buy out in large quantities any of this gear that's previously been bottlenecking you. When looking at the gear 12, you're also able to address this as well. The Mark 6 medpack, I wouldn't advise it with the new Mark 2 raid currencies, but the gold gear that's needed in quantities of 50, you definitely get a lot of value for that currency and a great conversion rate. Looking over the relic adjustments following the new Krayt raid, we're able to see that the impulse detectors and arrow magnifiers have been removed. Droid brains and the girder keypads are still significant bottlenecks and something that you need to find a creative way to work around. So if you look at the gear sources following the Krayt raid, I would put the Krayt raid payout as the top generator for core gear income and for advancement from gear 7 through to the end of gear 12 or up to gear 13. The reason being that the Krayt raid comes around 8 times a month, and you have the capacity now for more agency in deciding which gear specifically you want to buy out, effectively allowing you to direct your gear flow instead of random gear drops and waiting to build up a stash. If you've got, let's say, Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker that you want to build up, you can go and choose the specific gear you need, build it up after a single raid, and you will be able to advance him a few gear levels until you reach the bottleneck for him, which ends up being your Kyrotex. Galactic challenges I've moved up higher up the list. So with the galactic challenges, that comes around 8 times in a month, one from Monday to Wednesday and one from Friday over the weekend. So 8 times in a month you're able to fill this out. You're getting your injector handles, you're getting an Omicron, 2 Omicrons from each if you're able to red box every galactic challenge, and it's definitely worth it to try the best you can to red box it. You're also getting some shard shop currency, gear 12 pieces, the injectors I mentioned, and most importantly the Kyro, because Kyros is really what's going to drive as to what's ranked as a top gear source, because that remains the bottleneck that you're needing to address. Assault battles I'd put as the third most important gear source, because they come around 7 times a month depending on how many factions you have built up, how far you're able to get in the assault battle. If you're able to definitely invest in the teams, because it will yield dividends for your account. It occurs 7 times a month, you generate some shard shop currency, but more importantly you get Kyros, injectors, relic mats, and a couple of Zetas from every assault battle that runs. So 2 Zetas from every assault battle. If you're able to reach at least the challenge tier 1, you're generating 14 Zetas just as a by the way consequence of doing the assault battle. But more importantly, you're building up 70 of each of those injector handles. With time, it shouldn't be a major problem, but you'll always run short on it. It will remain a bottleneck, but at least this helps with alleviating it to some extent. Territory battles I've put as the fourth most important, because it comes around 2 times a month. It's a source of some Kyrotex, some gear 12, but more importantly now, if you're able to run Rise of the Empire, which you really should be running, you're getting access to your guild event token currency 1, 2, and 3, which I'll talk about later into what's the best values, but this helps you with alleviating some of the bottlenecks that still exist. You're also able to get access to relic materials by completing Rise of the Empire as well. Territory wars, these come around 4 to 5 times a month, and from the payouts you're able to get core gear, gear 12s, Kyrotech pieces, and get 1 or get 2 depending on what your guild's active GP is. You will also be getting some arrow magnifiers as well. The important thing is you get some Zetas as well, and you get some relic materials. So trying to strive for your guild to work together cooperatively and try to reach as many wins as they can to try and supersede the algorithm's predetermined matchmaking outcome that is determining of you having to get 50% is definitely in your favor, because you're able to generate a lot more gear inflow into your account. The daily challenges I put as the third from last. The reason is that now that you're able to buy out the core gear pieces that used to bottleneck your account in such large quantities because of the new Krayt raid, the change from that is not really significant. It's a bit of background passive kind of flow of gear, but it's not really going to, you're not so dependent on it anymore. And by the same token then, the Grand Arena end of round payouts also shift further down. Now I'm not saying that it's not important. Grand Arena payouts at high leagues is very important because of your crystal inflow into your account, but the core gear that was tied to that payout is much less necessary than it was in prior times or before the Krayt raid existed, because now you're able to buy out so much more of that gear that the gear drop from it is far less valuable. And I'd put the dailies far at the bottom, because you're only getting about maybe 3 to 5 pieces of each gear, but the thing that's attractive here is that you have to be getting the Kyros from it. It's not a lot, maybe 3 Kyrotech pieces. Sometimes you don't get the Kyro, which is very frustrating, but it is providing a small steady drop of Kyros into your account every single day. So That's my opinions on where I believe the gear sources are in terms of the value. I would definitely say putting a lot of focus in the Krayt trade and completing galactic challenges and assault battles is in the best interest of trying to steer your account in the way of getting enough gear to advance your characters timelessly. If we're looking at value, so when we're discussing value, the way I think about it is that you've only got a certain amount of each currency that comes into the account from the different events. You want to try and spend that currency on getting the most bang for your buck, as such, getting the most items that that currency can possibly yield. So doing a currency conversion comparison, you need to value it against some sort of constant, as each currency for each piece of gear has differing rates of returns. So in my opinion, crystals form that constant, because every gear has a specific crystal value, and the crystals is effectively what your real built money converts to. So with that in mind, then I've drawn up a spreadsheet that looks at the specific currency conversions, and I've attached the link in the description bar below. You can follow it through and just see what the conversion rates are. Basically everything highlighted in green is good value, and stuff that's generally just reasonably well attainable. Stuff that's in red, definitely avoid it. It's the worst value for money, I think. And if it's in this bright green, then these are generally values that are extremely good. They're either equal to, just slightly higher than the crystal value, or it's in some cases even better than the crystal value for 1 unit of that specific piece of gear. So looking through the best value buys by shop, if you look at the first shop, the featured shipments, this is where you normally purchase the 4 items for credit value. And there are daily shipments, etc. that pop up in here, but I'm not going to really go over that. The 4 items that appear for credits at every store refresh, definitely consider buying them. Every now and then there's a Mark III holo projector that pops up here, and at the moment you're getting 6 of those compared to 3 we used to get previously. Within a few days you'll be able to complete a complete holo projector. And if they're not needed for anyone, then so be it. You build up a surplus of them and you can use them for converting to rhodium heatsinks at a later point. The other gear, other than that holo projector, can be scrapped later by the scavenger to yield your carbonite circuit boards, etc. Looking over the cantina battles, here I think the best value for money is definitely using the extra cantina currency that you have, and buying out Cassian's U-Wing shards every time that it appears. It's a great ship, it helps out with the profundity, etc., but that's not really the focus of it. What I'm actually looking at more is if you look at the conversion of that ship currency. So if you had to buy 5 shards for 400, bearing in mind that this is the only ship purchase anywhere in any of the stores where you can actually purchase 5 shards, you're effectively getting 5 shards of the ship currency, and once you've 7 started, you're going to feed it into the shard shop currency. Each time you're buying 5 of these, you're getting 190 shard shop currency tokens. Now this ship conversion converts at a rate of 38 shard shop currency for each shard of Cassian's U-Wing, whereas if you do a character conversion, you're only getting 15 shards. And most character shards in the shops are now available for purchase at 10 shards. So if you had to spend the 400 cantina currency buying just 5 shards of Cassian's U-Wing, you're getting 190 shard shop currency for every 400 cantina currency you're spending. But if you had to buy a character shard, you're only getting 150. And while individually that doesn't sound like a lot, over the course of a week it does build up in the background to yield quite a lot of shard shop currency for you. And now we get to the interesting part, and that is the guild activity store. So previously there just used to be one little orange currency, which has now been converted into the last icon you can see next to number 48 there. But now we have the addition of 3 different new currencies. So the first is the Mark I raid currency, and the best value for this is on the core gear, what used to previously exist as the purple bottlenecks, as you can see indicated on the slide. Basically any purple gear from the store that you can buy with the Mark I raid currency is great value. It's very close to the crystal cost. It's far cheaper. You get more quantity of gear per currency spent than you do in any other store, even than the Get One and the Shard Shop, etc. You can also pick up shards of characters that you're missing. All the old legacy tier characters are now here, and the best part is they're not on a rotation basis, so you can always find them and buy them out at least 4 times in a day from the store if you're able to log in every single time to do so. The only thing is, once you've bought them out and 7-starred them, you're not able to access them anymore, but that's fine because you don't really want to waste the currency on that. You want to rather spend that currency on buying out all of the core gear that is available for you to access. If we look over the Mark II raid currency, there was an adjustment where you are now able to buy out characters that previously only be bought for guild event token currency, and this has actually been phenomenal. So you're able to buy out things like Helmet Yoda, the Imperial Probe Droid, Rebel Officer Leia Organa, IPD and Rolo will both previously get 2 currencies, which now frees that up for you. You're able to buy out Wampa, Malak, and General Skywalker. And since the shop refreshes 4 times a day, the cost and the number of shards you get is static, but you're able to max out these characters in a very quick amount of time. I was able to take my Malak from 50 out of 100 shards to complete that 50 in less than the space of about 3 days, just from using the Mark II currency to buy out all of my Malak shards. And that brings me to all of these characters now 7-star. Now you can't spend the currency any further once they're 7-star, just like with the Mark I, but you really wouldn't want to, because this currency is extremely valuable in helping you to get access to the right side Gear 12 pieces. So that's basically the pieces that are needed in a quantity of 50. The datapad, the furnace, the HoloLens, the stun gun, the Mark 12 keypad, and the Mark 12 thermal detonator. You are also better served using this Mark II currency to buy out all of the Gear 12 pieces that were needed in the quantities of 40 to complete the right-sided pieces. So that's the Mark 12 scanner, the Mark 12 stun cuff, hypo syringe, Kabanti, biotech salvage, and the shield generator. My advice though would be, when looking at the store, avoid any of the purple items. You don't really get great value for them. You get far better value for the 50 and the 40 piece right-sided pieces that I've indicated on the slide. I'd also advise to avoid the relic mats. The conversions are not great at all, and Kyrotechs, don't even look at it. The conversion is absolutely horrendous for Kyros from the shop. Definitely, after characters are completed, the next best investment is to spend them on the 50 piece right-sided Gear 12 pieces and the 40 piece requirement right-sided Gear 12. So anything on the right side that is gold is the best to be bought out of this store. And we then get to the Mark III currency. So the Mark III raid currency, I cannot stress this enough, do not buy the Zeta. I should actually just put Zeta, because there's not even more than one. It's just one Zeta material, not even a complete Zeta, it's just one piece for that. You need 20 to complete it. It is the worst value out of the store, but the best value materials for advancing beyond Relic 5. You get the best value here on the Electrum conductors, the Zenbittle cards, and the Aero magnifiers, as the Mark III conversion is actually better than the crystal cost per unit. It is also a more accessible means of purchasing the impulse detectors, but you do tend to get better value from the Wandering Scavenger every conquest. If you look at the rate, so you'd pay about 265 of the currency per impulse detector from the Mark III currency, and 207 of the conquest currency per impulse detector from the Wandering Scavenger. But you also have to bear in mind that conquest only comes around once a month, whereas the raid you're able to run effectively 8 times in a month. So you have much more access to more impulse detectors if that's what your roster is lacking, by using the Mark III currency. That brings us then to the next currency, and that is going to be what I'm going to refer to as the Legacy Guild Activity currency. So this used to be orange and is now being converted to these little golden coins, and you still receive them daily from your daily activities, the guild activities that are required, as well as from your territory wins, your territory wars. Whether you win or lose, you still get a significant inflow of this, in the region of about 1,000 and something up to 2,000. My priority suggestion for this would be using it to accelerate the farms on specific characters. So for example, the only character I think that I'm lacking from the store who's available is young Han Solo, and he's needed for Rise of the Empire mission. So I'm trying to slowly build him up in the background, because at the moment it's really wasted on buying the older gear that we used to. You get them at far better values than this currency from the Mark I raid currency conversion rates. So this currency is kind of piling up on the background, and it's not really well spent on that. What I would advise though is that if you have the capacity, use it for buying out the Mark 7 weapon mod. This is usually located in the last row of gear, and you basically will use this for converting to chromium transistors. So each of these Mark 7 weapon mods converts to about 3 chromium transistors, and it costs about 150 of this legacy guild activity currency to get 10 of them. So for about 150 of the currency, you're effectively getting about 30 chromium transistors. And given that this is one of the significant bottlenecks that exists with the Relic advancement, this is definitely what I feel the most value when looking at how to spend this currency. So every time you see this item pop up in this guild legacy store, definitely go in and purchase it. With Squad Arena, I'd still advise reaching the highest possible daily rank that you can. Yes, crystals are no longer tied to your Squad Arena placement, but you do get more of the Squad Arena currency, and you need that because the first priority is firstly the character forms. A lot of great characters in the store, and a lot of characters that are needed for your journey guide, etc. Thereafter, you'd want to spend it on the prestige mats, and I'd suggest banking up to 4,000 of this fleet prestige mats, because that's the amount you'd need roughly to take a capital ship from unlock right through to 7-star and to max out all of its required skills. But once you're in the range of about 4,000 of the prestige mats, it kind of feels pointless wasting all of that that currency on more prestige mats. The best value thereafter would then be to use it on gear. So first would be characters, second would be prestige mats, and third would be gear. And when looking at gear, the best gear comes from, if you look at the bottom of the store, the two left-hand side pieces. These are pieces that are usually cheaply affordable. They used to kind of fall in the background of some of the raids. But you can get them, or you can rely on donations, but it's nice to build up a surplus of them. You can help out guildmates with donations from them later, but this tends to be gear that tends to hold you up lower down the line. When you have a more advanced account, you're not really farming so many characters, then you're in need of this like background pieces of gear. Even if you're not needing it for advancing characters, whatever you buy out of here you can effectively scrap with the scavenger then. My suggestion would be to try and keep a bank or a surplus of around 1,000 arena currency, so if any piece of gear pops up that you need, you can easily purchase it. If you find that you're starting to run low on prestige mats, you can buy it out as well. Anything in excess of 1,000 arena currency, I'd recommend purchasing character shards and then feeding that excess into the shard shop currency. Galactic War Stores probably doesn't affect a lot of people once you pass the early game, but you ideally want to complete your character farms from here. Thereafter, you want to be buying out the ship shards. These tend to have a better conversion for the shard shop currency. So if you had to buy all three of the ships that appear in the Galactic War shop, you'd effectively be getting 456 shard shop currency. If you bought 3 characters for the same value, the 1,200 that you get from simming the Galactic War, you'd be able to get 450 shard shop currency. In the space of a week, that's going to be 42 extra shard shop currency just from buying the ships. You multiply that then by a month, that's 160. They're not significant amounts, but it does help over time to slowly build up a surplus flow into your shard shop currency. So when looking at the Fleet Arena store, obviously first complete any farms that you have. Then try and keep a bank of around 3,000 in case anything that you need pops up in the store. You're never lacking the fleet store currency needed to buy it out. Things like the Razor Crest or whatever ships you're missing or any characters that you're missing that you want to buy out. My advice would be that if you have any currency of the Fleet Arena currency in excess of 5,000, buy one of the Zeta materials. I've been doing this for a while now, and every week I'm able to complete one full Zeta on a character. So the first one is your Get One currency. So this is a little bit contentious now as to what you want to do, since the new update that came out about a week ago adjusting the new Mark II and the Mark II raid currency allocations. If you really have a need, say you are busy with a Galactic Legend unlock and you're needing a character to be completed for the journey guide, let's say for Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker for example, he needs Hermit Yoda, Wampa and Rolo, all of which to be completed. There is the option available to try and accelerate the farm through using this currency, but given that you're able to buy out 5 shards of those characters 4 times in a day from the Mark II raid currency, I think that's actually a better option, is buying it from the Mark II raid currency and not from the Get One, because you don't really get this currency flowing into your account as frequently anymore. So it would be better spent using it on something that's difficult to buy elsewhere. But if you really want to accelerate your farm, then yeah, that option does exist. You can complete the character farms from here. But the best value I think for the Get One is on the Gear 12 purple and the left-sided pieces. So this is your Mark 6 Medpack, your Mark 6 Command, the Mark 7 Hypo Syringe, Thermal Detonator, Fusion Furnace, Design Tech, and the Mark 8 Scanner, as well as the left-sided golden pieces. So those are the pieces that are needed in a quantity of about 30 to complete the left side advancement. If we look over the Get 2 currency, so again, complete the characters if you really want to, but the priority would rather go to Malevolence and Negotiator, since you can't really buy their shards out of anywhere else except this Get 2 store. Once the Malevolence and Negotiator is completed, the best use of this is definitely on the Chirotech. You tend to have the best value on Chiros compared to anywhere else in the game other than obviously crystals, and I personally feel that you're wasting the Get 2 by purchasing any type of Gear 12 purchases, as you can buy them either from the Get 1 store, the Shard Shop, or from the Mark II Mark II raid currency. I think this is actually wasted on the Legacy Territory Battle characters. You get like what, 5 shards for almost 2,000 of the currency, and depending on how well your guild is doing, that 2,000 might be your entire Territory Battle payout gone just for 5 shards. That's barely making a dent in that farm. Yeah, he's definitely needed because he's needed for JMK unlock. So if your guild is not running the Watt TB, or the Darkside GeoTV, maybe an argument could be made for WOT, but it might be more worthwhile to actually get then into a guild that is running WOT, complete the WOT farm, and then move on thereafter. Cam isn't really needed for anything, so I don't really think it's really a priority to have to worry about him so much. Maybe at some point in the future the currency might be adjusted and you might have a cheaper way of getting him, but at the moment he's definitely not great value for this get to currency. There's some relative value to be found for this on the legacy conquest characters. What I mean by this is that if you weren't able to get things like the Razor Crest, Cat or Maul, even with the Razor Crest, I actually argue you'd rather wait around for the Fleet Arena, but if you, let's say, 5 shots short and you just want to complete the 7-star Razor Crest to continue with the Executive farm, then yeah, definitely spend the currency from the Get 3 currency for that. Cat and Maul definitely are uplifting to your roster. If you're going for a JMK farm, or even if you're not, Cat slots really well into a Padme team. So I think it's worth considering using this currency for that, even though you're not getting great rates. And another point of value in this might be that if you don't have a account that's quite at 4 million GP and able to run the Proving Grounds, or if you're struggling with Proving Grounds and just want to unlock Cat faster, then the Get 3 currency would definitely be in your interest for purchasing of those items. But the best value, I believe, actually exists with the purchasing out of Kairos, because you get far better value from the Get 3 conversion for the Kyrotech pieces than you do with the Get 2. And you can also use it for the micro attenuators to continue advancing your mods further on. But definitely do not spend on any of the relic mats. It's terrible value on any of the relic mats that you obtain from here. Finally, we get then to, or second to last I guess, we get to the Grand Arena currency, and I would advise only using this exclusively pretty much for your Kyrotech. That effectively gives you Get 2, Get 3 and your Grand Arena currency. 3 different shops and 3 different currencies that can help you with supercharging the inflow of Kyrotechs into your account. In terms of looking at the short shop currency, so I would recommend to only buy out the 360 cost pieces until you've got a surplus of them and are not needing them in excess anymore. Thereafter, if you feel that you're satisfied with the amount that you have banked up of each of these individual items, you could look at buying anything else that you feel you're in deficit of. But the best value from this account comes from everything required for a left side gear 12 piece. So the purple gear and the gold gear needed on the left side pieces of your gear 12 progression. This represents the best shop other than the Get 1, but since you're able to generate and have some control over short shop currency conversions, I think that actually the short shop actually suits you better for advancing your Gear 12 characters. So the best value buys for the Conquest currency. During the Conquest season, the Wandering Scavenger actually has a lot of great value items. So everything from the injector handles to the left-sided Gear 12 pieces, the 30-piece requirements, the right side 50-piece and the right side 40-piece Gear 12s, as well as any relic mats needed from under Relic 5. So that's the Carbonite circuit boards, bronzium wiring, impulse detectors, and an argument could even be made for the Erodium heatsink, but it does eat up a lot of currency. Impulse detectors also are great value from the Wandering Scavenger, but also uses a lot of currency, and depending on how well you're doing, that might be a bit of a push for your roster. Out of Conquest season, so let's say the Conquest has ended, and you still have a little bit of the currency left over, I'd advise buying any of the items that you can see on the slide here. So that's basically all of the typical core gear that used to be bottlenecks, or the Mark 5 droid collars. But granted that this currency is coming in, that this gear is coming in from your Mark 2 raid, your Mark 1 raid currency, and that it's slowly coming in from your daily challenges and background from your dailies, etc. Depending, but like let's say you've got like 80 or something and you just see one of these items and you're in a pinch and you need to buy it, you definitely get good value out of the Conquest store for that currency. But don't hoard up the currency just to spend it on that gear. It's wasted in that regard. Rather use it during the Conquest season for everything I indicated on the previous slide, or use it out of season just to finish up something that's holding you back slightly. So when you look at the gear inflow, I'm going to attach this infographic to the description below and you guys can get hold of it. But this basically shows where the best sources to get gear flow for the different currencies comes from. From here, the main bottleneck that exists after the gear changes from the crate raid is with the Kyrotechs, and the best conversions are from Get 2, Get 3 and the Grand Arena currency store. You can also farm them, so the Kyrotech Shock Prod is available in the light side 7B, which is great because you get the Mark 5 datapad that's used for converting to bronzium wiring later, and you can get the Kyro computer from Darkside 8A. After you've finished all of the hard battles, since those are the only two real bottlenecks that seem to exist, it might be worthwhile splitting the remaining free energy refreshes you have during the day to exclusively farm out these 2 items. You also get Kairos coming in from territory wars, territory battles, assault battles, galactic challenges, and daily activities. But by doing this and ensuring that you're using the currency as best you can to get as many of these Kairos, it shouldn't be too much of a bottleneck for your account down the line. In terms of gear 1 to gear 6 progression, that should still not really be a problem. You should be able to get it from the hard node farming as a byproduct, any deficits you can fulfill with squad arena currency, and then ask your guild to assist with donations. Your gear 7 to gear 11 progression is going to be basically handled by the Mark 1 raid currency, by territory war payouts, grand arena payouts, galactic challenges, and daily activities. When you're looking at the gear 12 progression, the left side, the gold and purple pieces are best obtained from the use of shard shop currency and get 1 for any excess that you have, but bear in mind that get 1 won't be coming into your account as frequently because you're dependent on territory wars and territory battles specifically to drive the volume of that income. Territory war payouts will help a little bit with some of this gear 12 pieces, but they're going to be random allocations of your left-sided pieces. Galactic challenges may also help to some extent, and any excess fleet energy you have, let's say you have nobody who's being geared up to gear 12, my advice would be to spend it buying out that Mark 6 medpack, since that's the major bottleneck for this left and right-sided purple gear that's required. We're looking at the right side for gear 12 pieces. The gold pieces, the best value exists with the Mark II raid currency. The injectors during conquest season, definitely buy them out from the wandering scavenger whenever they appear, and the assault battles remain the best value, or the best return on investment for time for getting the injector handles, and you will also get some every galactic challenge that comes around. With Relic advancement, so Relic 1 to 5 is best handled through the scavenger conversions, and there's lots of resources available online that looks at where the best scavengers are. Locus, for example, has a great video that looks at the best items to convert and to scrap for each of these Relic mats. You can also buy them out from the Wandering Scavenger if you are not in the mood to scrap or don't want gear to scrap for this. And you also get some gear, Relic 1 to Relic 5 materials from your territory wars and your assault battles as well. Relic 6 to 8, the best value for this comes from your Mark III, Wandering Scavenger, a bit from Territory Wars, and also from Scavenger if you're really in a pinch. But definitely the best is from the Mark III conversion. I've also attached another infographic that looks at the best ways to use the currencies from different shops and the best buys from each of these stores. So you can just go through this, but they basically look at creating a kind of gear flow for yourself, everything from the legacy currency. And you'll see that there's a star and several of these stores. But what the star indicates is that where applicable, character shard farming takes priority. You can actually look at discarding the get stores. I don't think that should prioritize character farming anymore, since they are available from Mark II currency, and that's where the star is for that reason. Mark 1, just to flash farm whatever characters you have with whatever little extra currency you have, let's say towards the end of your payout and you're scraping the barrel on the currency, then use it to buy out things like, let's say, Log Ray, Colonel Stark, etc., whatever you're missing. If you're looking at the legacy currency, then buying out that Mark 7 weapon mod and converting to chromium transistors through the scavenger remains the best value from that currency. And then also various ways in which to feed the shard shop currency from different stores to lead into the shard shop that is then going to be used to purchase gear 12 left-sided pieces. Any of those 360 cost pieces that are appearing, buy them out. I just added a small thing here with hot utils. So if you have access to hot utils and have access to the Bronzium pack opener, I definitely would advise looking into that as an option if you want to buy something that's going to help you out in the game. Each week you're able to open anywhere between 100 to 250 something Bronzium packs, depending on how many of the ally points you've accumulated, and that'll allow you to get about between 2,000 up to 5,000 shard shop currency per week, depending on how active you are in the game. And that's definitely something to look into because it'll help you to buy out more of those pieces. So just a quick comment here on this idea about banking. So this is basically setting a predetermined reserve limit on a currency for easy spending on any unit that needs priority for upgrades. So when you're working on Galactic Legend unlocks, for example. And what exactly this is going to be is going to differ between accounts. So I decided, you know what, I can't really tell you what to do for your individual account, so I'll just show you an example of what I'm doing with my account at the moment. So with Cantina Energy, for example, I'm not going to be banking anything for that because the Cantina Energy is... I don't have anything that I really need to purchase. And as it comes up, I buy whatever I need, which is usually Cassian's Ewing, and then the excess just sits there until I'm able to build up to another 400 and buy out another Cassian's Ewing. The Legacy Guild activity, I don't really see a need to bank this anymore. In the past, I would have kept a reserve because you want to buy core gear out of it, but now since the core gear is available from the Mark 1 currency, it's kind of wasted on this Legacy Guild, so as it comes, I spend it. The Mark 1, Mark 2 and Mark 3 raid currencies all have varying caps on them. So Mark 1 has a limit of 30,000, so I'm going to keep a bank of about 20,000. Anything in excess of that, I'm going to start buying out gear that I need and trying to build a reserve. The Mark 2 currency has a cap of 20,000, so I'd bank about 10,000 to spend on anything I need for priority. Mark 3, I'd keep a bank of about 10,000. Squad Arena I've already mentioned earlier in the video to try and keep a bank of around 1,000. Galactic War is kind of pointless to bank anything. Fleet Arena, try and bank around 3,000 to buy out any shards of whatever comes up that you might need. Anything over 5,000, I'd purchase the Zeta to reduce the amount to around 3,000. Get 1, since the characters are now available from the Mark 2 raid currency, it doesn't really matter, you just spend the Get 1 as you get it. The same with Get 2 and Get 3. Get 2 and Get 3, you don't really want to hold on to them, maybe with Get 2 if you're farming the Negotiate and Malevolence. Let me just take that back. If you're farming Negotiate and Malevolence, hold on to your Get 2 so you're able to always buy those shards whenever they appear in the store. But once those 2 capital ships are maxed out, then you definitely want to be spending any Get 2, any Get 3 you have on as much Kairos as you can to alleviate that major bottleneck. And the same with the Grand Arena tokens as well. Keep using them just for the Kyrotechs. The shard ship currency, I'll try and keep a bank of around 1,000 to 1,200 so that if I'm in a fix and I'm really desperate for any of that left-sided gear pieces, I always have some on hand to buy them out whenever they appear in the store. And Conquest, I don't really see a point in keeping any of the Conquest currency. Whatever you need, just use it. So essentially, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is a resource management game and thereby involves this idea about inventory management. Any excess currency above the set reserve that I talked about with the idea about banking should be spent on building an inventory of commonly used gear. And these would previously be a typical bottleneck gears. So bottleneck usually forms whenever you have a demand for a specific item outstripping the supply by quite a significant amount. So the first priority would be to forecast the gear needed for the current project, and you can check that up on Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes.gg. Let's say I'm farming Jabba, for example. So let's say I go onto SWGOH.gg and see he needs, I don't know, let's say 500 Carbantis or something. If all of my major stuff is handled, then I would want to spend any excess, and if let's say I'm in excess of what I decided to bank for the Mark 1 currency, I want to spend the excess on buying out as much Carbantis as I can. So when it comes around to actually unlocking the Galactic Legend and gearing them up, I'm not waiting around for this gear to kind of flow in. I've already got a surplus to advance the character's progression much faster. And this would mainly involve your Mark 1 and your Mark 2 currencies now, that you'd be wanting to buy out this gear so you have stockpiles of it to finish up whatever projects you have and to work on the unlock requirements further down the line. So it may take some time, but you will eventually notice a more rapid progression of characters through the early gear levels and even right through to gear 12 as time goes on and you've completed more and more. The one nice thing about Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is that we don't have like an excess amount of characters like, let's say, Marvel Strike Force. There's about 246 characters at the moment in the game, and you're not going to unlock all 246 or have all of them in relic levels anytime realistically unless you're spending a lot of money on the game. But the idea is that you want to try and make your gearing as efficient as possible, and inventory management is a huge step in that progression. And when we're looking at a lot of older characters, more older than newer characters are able to be advanced in this regard, and this is due to the idea about Kyrotechs being a major bottleneck on newer characters. So by stockpiling the gear, any old characters that you're working on, you should be able to rapidly push them through. So in summary, the Post-Krayt Economy changes are great and should see accelerated roster advancement all around. The Mark 1 currency is best used for all purple gear from gear 7 to gear 12. Mark 2 is best used for characters, and then all the right side gear 12 pieces. Mark 3 would be best used for all relic pieces needed past relic 5. Kyrotech becomes more of a bottleneck now due to more units reaching gear 12 and the newer units requiring large quantities of Kyrotechs. So to reduce the strain, I'd advise looking at the best value for Kairos coming from Get 2, Get 3 and Grand Arena currencies, to farm 5 hard nodes daily and then spend the rest of the yellow energy on light side node 7B and dark side node 8A, and then also take advantage of other Kairos sources in the game: territory wars, territory battles, assault battles and daily activities, as well as galactic challenges. Remember that Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is effectively a long-term game. It requires planning and patience, so don't get too frustrated, but try and draft a plan as to where you'd want to be and what you're wanting to achieve with the account, so that you never find yourself frustrated and stuck for progression. But anyway, this has been the end of my Economics 101 lecture. It's a bit longer than normal and a very different idea than what my content normally shows. But if you guys enjoyed this, then just feel free to leave a comment and like the video. If there's any ideas, any difference of opinions you guys have about this, then feel free to also mention that in the comments below. But thanks so very much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys around. Take care. Cheers.